gentlemen. I mean, they weren't assholes. They were nice men, but they were hardcore.
He was always known as the cowboy, with the gravel-cut voice, the man Hollywood relied on when the West needed to feel real. Sam Elliott did not simply play cowboys, he embodied them, from the slow walk to the quiet stare that carried more meaning than dialogue ever could. For decades, audiences saw calm, wisdom, and restraint. What they did not see were the grudges held quietly and the lines he refused to let anyone cross. By the time Elliott reached his 80s, he stopped holding back, and when he finally spoke, it was not nostalgia or reflection. It was direct, deliberate, and sharp. This was not gossip, it was confrontation. Elliott named names, and those names shook Hollywood because they belonged to powerful figures, award winners, box office giants, longtime peers, even people he once trusted like family. In his eyes, they all shared the same unforgivable mistake, betraying the code he lived by. To Elliott, the West was not a visual style or marketing angle. It was a way of life shaped by honesty, hardship, and earned respect. Anyone who treated it lightly lost credibility immediately. One name hit harder than the rest: Benedict Cumberbatch. That feud became the first major flashpoint, dragging Elliott into headlines he never sought. It began in 2021 when The Power of the Dog dominated awards season. Critics praised the film for rethinking masculinity and offering a darker psychological Western. Elliott saw something different. Speaking on the WTF podcast with Mark Maron, he criticized the film as artificial and disconnected from real cowboy life. He questioned its tone, imagery, and intent, suggesting it leaned more toward symbolism than truth. His harshest criticism focused on Cumberbatch. Elliott openly questioned how someone raised outside the American West could authentically portray its culture. To him, lived experience mattered more than preparation. Even though Cumberbatch reportedly trained extensively and stayed in character off camera, Elliott remained unconvinced. He viewed the performance as polished rather than worn in, studied rather than instinctive. The accent, posture, and controlled delivery felt staged, like observation instead of memory. The backlash was immediate. Critics accused Elliott of gatekeeping and resisting modern storytelling. Some framed his comments as discomfort with evolving perspectives. Director Jane Campion responded publicly during an awards speech, suggesting Elliott's stance carried a sexist edge. The disagreement quickly escalated into a cultural standoff. Elliott never retracted his words. He did not apologize or soften his position. Cumberbatch chose silence. Years later, there has been no reconciliation. What made the divide permanent was that it was never about a single film. It was about worldview. Elliott believes the West is a lived reality shaped by generations, not a metaphor to reshape for awards. Respect, to him, is earned through understanding, not research alone. That belief also shaped another rivalry that surprised many: Kevin Costner. On paper, Elliott and Costner should have been allies. Both built iconic careers in Western roles and carried the cowboy image into modern Hollywood. Yet insiders say Elliott never respected Costner's version of the West. To Elliott, authenticity is not costume. It is survival. His performances rely on restraint and silence shaped by lived rhythms. Costner, by contrast, became a polished Hollywood figure. Dances with Wolves earned awards, and Yellowstone turned him into a television icon. To fans, he represents the modern cowboy. To Elliott, the difference was everything. Elliott reportedly saw it differently. In his view, Costner's characters felt curated rather than lived in, more cinematic than grounded. He allegedly once remarked that Costner played ranchers like it was dress-up, a line that cut deep because it struck at the heart of Elliott's values. To him, Costner was performing a life rather than embodying it, treating cowboy culture as a role instead of a code. When Yellowstone exploded in popularity and Elliott was offered a cameo, he declined without hesitation. The message was clear. Popularity did not equal authenticity, and success did not override principle. These conflicts reveal more than personal grudges. They expose a rigid belief system that Elliott has never abandoned. He measures people by whether they honor the weight of what they portray. If they fail that test, no amount of praise or success can change his mind. He turned the offer down without hesitation, dismissing the show as a glossy soap opera dressed up in a cowboy hat. To Sam Elliott, it symbolized everything he believed Hollywood had gotten wrong. In his view, grit had been swapped for shine, struggle replaced with style, and the West reduced to scenery instead of substance. He believed the soul of that world had been traded away for ratings and buzz, and once that line was crossed, there was no going back. The decision was quiet, but it carried weight, and everyone involved understood it was final. The tension between Elliott and Kevin Costner never exploded into public arguments or headline-making confrontations. It did not need to. The distance said everything. One producer summed it up perfectly when he said they never raised their voices, but the silence between them could freeze a desert. Costner continued climbing, riding massive success and global recognition, while Elliott stayed planted exactly where he stood. He never chased relevance, never adjusted his values to fit trends, and never bent just to stay visible. That refusal to move became his statement. For Elliott, standing still was not stubbornness. It was loyalty to a code. He believed that once you start reshaping truth to fit comfort or applause, you lose the right to claim authenticity. So while Costner's version of the West reached millions of living rooms, Elliott remained convinced that popularity meant nothing without honesty. In his mind, the divide was permanent, not personal, and certainly not negotiable. Sliding into the next name on Elliott's list brings a very different kind of conflict: Nicolas Cage. To audiences, Cage is unpredictable, daring, and fearless, a performer who takes risks others avoid. His career twists through extremes, from quiet drama to explosive spectacle. For Elliott, that very unpredictability represented the problem. He believed Cage's approach stood in direct opposition to what acting was supposed to be. Elliott has always preached restraint. He believes truth lives in pauses, in what is not said, in the space between words. A look held a second too long, a silence allowed to breathe, a reaction that feels earned rather than forced. That philosophy shaped his entire career. Cage, on the other hand, built his reputation on intensity and sudden shifts, performances that surge and crash with energy that demands attention. To Elliott, it felt theatrical rather than grounded. Their clash became most visible when they worked together on Ghost Rider in 2007. On set, the contrast was impossible to ignore. Elliott arrived measured and calm, delivering his lines with control and purpose. Cage moved through scenes with raw momentum, pushing emotional boundaries and stretching moments beyond expectation. The styles did not blend, they collided. Elliott never confronted Cage directly. He did not believe in public scenes or lectures. Off camera, however, his assessment was sharp and unforgiving. He reportedly described Cage's approach as flash over fire, spectacle without warmth. That single remark revealed how deeply Elliott rejected the idea of performance as explosion. To him, acting was not about dominating a scene, but serving it. The louder the performance became, the less truth he believed it carried. While Cage continued earning awards and building a devoted following that praised his fearlessness, Elliott remained unmoved. In his eyes, Cage symbolized a shift where discipline gave way to noise. What made this divide lasting was that Elliott never framed it as rivalry. He did not see Cage as competition. He saw him as a symptom, a sign that acting had drifted toward ego and away from character. Elliott believes true craft disappears into the role, leaving only the story behind. Cage, in his view, made the role disappear into himself. That difference was irreconcilable, and so the ice between them never melted. Then comes a name that, according to those close to Elliott, stirred even deeper frustration: Jared Leto. Unlike the others, Elliott never shared a set with him. There was no single project, no direct clash of styles in front of cameras. And yet, Elliott's disdain for Leto lingered in conversations for years, resurfacing whenever the topic of modern acting excess came up. For Elliott, acting is sacred. It is built on silence, truth, and weight earned through discipline. He believes preparation should serve the story, not overshadow it. Leto, however, became widely known for extreme method behavior, stories of refusing to break character, and sending unsettling items to co-stars during Suicide Squad. Those stories spread fast, dominating headlines and social media, often becoming bigger than the performances themselves. To Elliott, that was not dedication, it was distraction. He reportedly described it as turning acting into a carnival, a move that humiliated the craft instead of honoring it. That single sentiment captured his disgust. Unlike his disagreements with Benedict Cumberbatch or Kevin Costner, where films and interpretations were at least open to debate, his issue with Leto went deeper. Elliott saw it as a fundamental misunderstanding of what acting is meant to be. In his philosophy, discipline is quiet, respect is invisible. Preparation should never become a spectacle. When the process becomes louder than the result, Elliott believes the work loses its integrity. That belief left no room for compromise. His frustration with Leto was not about personality or fame. It was about boundaries, lines he believed should never be crossed. Across all these names, one pattern remains clear. Sam Elliott does not bend. He does not adapt his values to fit the moment. He does not soften his opinions for approval. Whether facing global stars, award winners, or cultural favorites, he measures everyone by the same standard. If they fail to honor the weight of the craft, he steps away, silently and permanently. It was never about personal taste or acting style. For Sam Elliott, it always came down to values. That line became painfully clear when he nearly signed onto a project that was later reworked around Jared Leto. At first, Elliott showed interest. The script had weight. The tone felt grounded. It looked like the kind of story he could stand behind. Then the casting news reached him. Leto was attached. The reaction was immediate and absolute. Elliott walked away without explanation. No press release, no public comments, no dramatic exit, just silence. In Hollywood, silence can be sharper than any insult. To those who knew Elliott, the message was obvious. Sharing the screen with Leto would cross a line he refused to touch. It was not about career strategy or ego. It was about belief. Elliott saw acting as something almost sacred, built on restraint and respect. In his eyes, appearing alongside someone whose process he viewed as performative spectacle would cheapen everything he had spent decades protecting. That quiet refusal echoed far louder than a rant ever could, and years later, the tension still lingers without resolution. Leto continued rising. Awards followed. An Oscar cemented his status. Elliott watched from a distance, unmoved. To him, Leto's success did not represent victory. It represented confirmation. Confirmation that the industry had rewarded behavior he believed undermined the craft. While others saw bold commitment, Elliott saw excess. While Hollywood applauded transformation, he saw attention-seeking. Instead of adjusting his stance to align with the Academy, Elliott doubled down on his refusal to compromise. He chose isolation over acceptance and principle over trophies. Then comes a different kind of clash, one shaped not by distance but by proximity. Ashton Kutcher. Unlike the others, Elliott worked directly with him on Netflix's The Ranch. That set became a quiet battlefield of philosophies. Kutcher entered as a modern Hollywood success story. Sitcom fame, romantic leads, business ventures, massive online following. He represented the new system, where visibility often mattered more than depth. Elliott came from the opposite direction. Decades of overlooked roles, slow-earned credibility, respect built through consistency rather than hype. The collision was inevitable. On set, Elliott remained professional at all times. He hit his marks, delivered his lines with the same steady authority audiences expected. He never raised his voice or caused disruption. But those around them noticed the signals: the long looks, the tightened jaw, the small head shake after a take. According to one insider, Elliott was overheard muttering that Kutcher was a decent person, but not a real actor. In another moment, the judgment cut deeper. He allegedly said Kutcher performed like someone who learned acting online. That comment carried weight. For Elliott, acting was not something you picked up through shortcuts. It was earned through time, failure, and humility. He believed every role should leave marks on you, not just credits on a resume. Kutcher, in his eyes, symbolized an industry that rewarded charm and metrics over substance. To Elliott, this was not jealousy. It was disappointment. A system he once trusted felt unrecognizable. What makes the situation more uncomfortable is that Kutcher genuinely admired him. In interviews, Kutcher spoke highly of Elliott, calling him a legend and a mentor figure. He expressed gratitude for sharing scenes with someone he respected deeply. That admiration, however, was never returned. Elliott could not meet him halfway, not out of cruelty, but conviction. To him, respect had to be grounded in shared values, not praise. In Sam Elliott's worldview, acting was never meant to revolve around paparazzi moments, online relevance, or personal branding. To him, the craft lived in truth, silence, and emotional weight that did not need explanation or promotion. That belief shaped how he viewed Ashton Kutcher, who came to symbolize the rise of celebrity over storytelling. For Elliott, Kutcher represented a system where visibility mattered more than depth, where fame arrived before experience. That difference alone created a divide no amount of on-screen chemistry could repair. The next conflict went beyond actors and struck at the heart of direction itself: Jane Campion. If Benedict Cumberbatch felt the impact of Elliott's criticism, Campion absorbed the full force and returned it. The clash began in 2021 when Elliott openly criticized The Power of the Dog, mocking what he saw as its self-serious tone and questioning whether a filmmaker from outside the American West could authentically tell a cowboy story rooted in lived experience. To Elliott, the issue was legitimacy. He framed the film not simply as flawed, but as disconnected from the reality it claimed to portray. That framing touched a nerve. Campion responded publicly, suggesting Elliott's stance reflected outdated thinking and an attempt to control a genre long dominated by male voices. The disagreement quickly escalated from artistic critique into a broader cultural confrontation. Neither side backed down, and the divide hardened. For Elliott, the exchange confirmed something he had felt for years. Hollywood, in his eyes, had drifted away from the realities it claimed to honor, replacing lived experience with symbolism and prestige. That belief followed him into one of the most public moments of the feud. At the Directors Guild Awards in 2022, as Campion accepted her prize, she delivered a sharp line that stunned the room. "He's not a cowboy, he's an actor." the sentence reframed the entire conflict. To Elliott, the remark struck at the core of his identity. He never claimed to be anything more than an actor, but he had built his career on honoring the people and places he portrayed. That distinction mattered deeply to him. Campion's words shifted the debate from authenticity to authority, casting Elliott as a gatekeeper unwilling to accept new perspectives on masculinity and storytelling under female direction. The backlash was immediate. Elliott was no longer seen as a critic of a single film, but as a symbol of resistance to change. Campion's supporters defended her vision, while Elliott remained silent. He offered no apology and no clarification. Insiders say he simply moved on, unmoved by the industry's response. Still, the damage lingered. The feud became a defining moment late in his career, painting him as rigid and out of step with modern Hollywood. Yet the most painful fracture came not from public debate, but from a quiet loss: Jeff Bridges. For years, Bridges was more than a colleague to Elliott. He was a kindred spirit, someone who shared the same understated presence and respect for letting characters breathe. Their bond was most visible in The Big Lebowski in 1998, where Bridges' laid-back dude perfectly balanced Elliott's calm stranger. Fans felt the chemistry because it felt genuine. Off-screen, the respect was real, until something slowly shifted after Bridges won his Oscar for Crazy Heart in 2010. Insiders say Bridges did not change overnight. He simply became more polished, more aware of his stature, more careful with his image. To most, it looked like growth. To Elliott, it felt like loss. Fame, in his eyes, had softened the honesty he once admired. Elliott never confronted Bridges. He never turned the shift into a public dispute. Instead, distance grew quietly. In a later interview, Elliott offered a cryptic line many believe was aimed at his former friend. "Some folks change, others just show who they always were." There was no blow-up, no public fallout. They simply stopped showing up for each other. Looking across all 7 names tied to these conflicts, a pattern is clear. Sam Elliott did not chase controversy. Each fracture came from the same source: an unbending loyalty to his own code. He measured people not by awards or popularity, but by whether they honored the craft as he understood it. When that line was crossed, he did not argue. He withdrew. So, what do you think? Was Sam Elliott right to stand his ground, or did his refusal to bend cost him more than it protected? Share your thoughts in the comments, like the video, and subscribe for more stories Hollywood rarely talks about.